Good morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night. I don't know why I keep saying that because it's really not that funny after I do it so many times. So I need to knock it off. All right. So we're going to do the second part of the Civil War, politics of war. And I need to make sure that you are taking your outline notes and or Cornell notes. Doesn't matter to me. Do either one. Make sure you complete your exit ticket for the day. Okay. The Civil War, politics of war. Britain's neutrality. The South, excuse me, I just knocked over my microphone. All right, that's fine. The South was depending on Britain and or France to come to their aid and renew their cotton trade, just like they were trying. Remember, they were trying to uh, repeat what the colonists did in the Revolution. Britain found the other sources for cotton and stockpiled surpluses before the war began because they weren't stupid. They were keeping an eye on things and what was going on. So they found other places, including India. That's where they got most of it. Food crops, wheat and corn from the north had replaced cotton as America's most important exports. For these reasons, the British chose to remain neutral in the war between the states. The Trent Affair. Shortly after the war began, the Confederates, or rebels, sent two diplomats to Britain to ask for their support. James Mason and John Slidell traveled on the British ship, the HMS Trent. The Union warship San Jacinto stopped and boarded the Trent and arrested them. Mason and Slidell were arrested. Britain took this as an act of war and moved troops to Canada for a possible war with the Union. Lincoln prevented the war by pardoning the men. He used his executive powers to say, okay, you're not going to get in trouble. You may go. Okay. Because he did not want a war with Britain, for sure. Emancipation. So Lincoln's original strategy for the war did not involve freeing slaves. He used this to change the purpose of the war from preserving the Union, his original goal, to freeing the slaves. And this had quite a few consequences. Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all of the slaves in the seceded states, the Confederate states, that were not occupied or border states. It also prevented all European countries who had abolished slavery from aiding the South. Okay, so this was a huge political move. What Lincoln did was he made the war about a moral issue. Instead of just preserving the Union, it was about abolishing slavery. So countries such as England and France were definitely not going to back the South because once it became a moral or ethical issue, they wanted to stay out of it for sure. Lincoln did not want to issue the proclamation publicly until the North had a successful battle. This was because he needed to show that the North was powerful enough. He used the Battle of Antietam, the bloodiest battle of the war, as his win. It took effect January 1st, 1863. Not everyone was happy with the decision to free the slaves. Northern Democrats thought it would make the war longer. Some soldiers deserted, refusing to fight for this cause. So some of the Northern soldiers were like, no, we're not fighting to free slaves. The South renewed their effort to save their way of life. The Emancipation Proclamation really didn't have any effect on slaves because of this. Okay, this is something you do need to understand. Okay, the Emancipation Proclamation, made it so that slavery was illegal in the Confederate States. But at this point, President Lincoln didn't have any power in the Confederate States because they had a president, President Davis. So Jefferson Davis was the Confederacy's president. But because Lincoln did this, he emancipated those slaves. He made the war about getting rid of slavery. free Northern blacks enlisted in the Union Army to fight for themselves, to fight for their fellow African Americans. I mean, it was a big deal. It was a bigger deal to them than anybody else, other than that it just made it about an ethical issue. Lincoln takes charge. Lincoln sent troops and occupied the border states from the beginning of the war. He also suspended habeas corpus, or the legal authority to detain a person. This was a big problem because it was, in Mr. Riley's point of view, this was a big blunder on Lincoln's part, because basically it just means that you can be arrested and put in jail and held in jail for no reason. You don't even have to be charged with anything. And now that goes against the Bill of Rights, which we've talked about. Okay, you can't be held against your will without cause. Okay, without a trial, so basically suspending habeas corpus takes away your rights. So, and it was a big mistake because it really upset a lot of people. Confederate sympathizers in the North were arrested and telegrams were seized. Again, even though they might have been Confederate sympathizers, they were being held without a trial. Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger B. Taney said that Lincoln had overstepped his authority, but he continued to use his presidential powers to the fullest extent. This is actually one of the aspects of the presidency that Lincoln did, was he really expanded executive power, setting a precedent. All wartime presidents have taken Lincoln's lead to protect the American people. In other words, when a war happens, generally speaking, a president takes on a different role, a slightly different role. They take a more direct role in what's going on with the war. And it makes it so that decisions can be made faster instead of going through the whole process with Congress, which is good and bad. Copperheads. Well, anti-war Democrats were called copperheads, which is a deadly venomous snake. As 1862 ends, the ironclads appear. Both sides made ships made of iron, capable of repelling cannonballs and fire. The Monitor, a new ship, which was from the North, fought the Merrimac, which was a Southern ship, fought for 5 hours, tied. They couldn't destroy each other. The Merrimac was sunk to prevent it from going into Northern hands. Even though they didn't really win, the North had won the actual battle that it was part of, and so the Southerners sank the ship because they didn't want the Northerners, they didn't want the Union to have that kind of technology. Okay, so we will get to the Civil War, life during wartime, I believe next week. So make sure you're doing you're completing your outline notes or your Cornell notes, whichever ones you choose to do, and complete your exit ticket. Get them to me. If you have any questions, make sure you email or come into Zoom. All right. Thank you very much. Everybody have an excellent day.